Good evening. This is the Auburn Finance Committee. Today is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024. It's about 6 p.m. I'm going to read the remote participation script. This open meeting of the Auburn Town Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, the number is 1-786-535-3211 with an access code of 991-599-357. Or the public can join via computer at http://global.gotomeeting.com/join/991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Auburn Cable Television. All members are currently present. I believe we'll have one town department head that will join us remotely. Okay. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ed Coleman.
Here.
Michael Marshall.
Present.
George Graham.
Here.
Stephen Consiglio.
Here.
Town officials and employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. CFO Town Accountant Karen Harnoy.
Here.
And Administrative Assistant Sharon Kwiatkowski.
Here.
Okay, so we have a relatively quick agenda for tonight. We just have some transfers, some minutes, and adjourn. Thank you to everybody for, on short notice, coming out this evening. Well, CFO Harnoy will give us the reasons why we got together on an impromptu, but we'll get to that once we get to those particular transfers. So the first transfer we have is coming from the DPW Cemetery Division. It is coming from the Maintenance VMC Parks account. Amount requested $5,000 going to the Cemetery Clerical account. Reason given, temporary clerical assistance. Ms. Paquin, did you want to give some insight on this one?
Sure, thank you. So we have a part-time clerk that works at the cemetery, and she had to go on unexpected leave. So this is to be able to fund some temporary help for us for about 10 weeks.
Any questions on this one?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next transfer is from the Town Clerk's Elections Department. We've got 4 transfers in total. It appears 3 are coming from, or going to the same account.
I move that we take the first 3 transfers as one.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to take those first 3 transfers as one. All in favor?
Hey.
Very good. So coming from the salary account, amount requested $8,224.76 going to clerical. The next one from the assistant clerk account, amount requested $8,101, and I believe that is 5 cents, also going to clerical. And from the stipend account, amount requested $1,000 going to clerical. See, we have the town clerk with us. Did you want to come up and give us some insight on this request? Good evening. That might have been the chief that that's the chief. The chief was talking about that chair. He used that one in his interview the other day.
So we have one of our clerks that's in the office has some issues going on right now, and she's only in for half of the day. So I need somebody to help with the other half of the day. So we've got somebody for 20 hours a week. Right now, as it stands right now, it's only going to be for 5 weeks.
Okay.
So.
And the busyness of the office is, do you have
Busy?
primaries go up, things that require?
Yeah, we have dog licenses coming in, we have census coming in, or the street reports, and then we also have all of the ballot applications, and we're actually getting ready to send our first set of ballots out tomorrow morning. So.
Any additional questions to the town clerk?
To the chair.
Sir?
My only question is, these transfers appear to empty those 3 accounts.
Yep.
Do we have any concern about like needing money in any of those accounts throughout the
I
rest of
don't think so because there's a difference from what Deb Grimo is making to what I'm making. So what you see is that difference. And then from when I became the interim town clerk, we were left without a assistant town clerk for a few months. So that's what the other difference is from that time period that nobody was in there. You're welcome.
Any additional questions?
Motion approved.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and this is the last one that's on this transfer request. From the list binding account, amount requested $950. Going to the miscellaneous supplies, reason given, need to order new, what is that?
Vital books?
Vital books. Okay, I just want to make sure I read that correctly. New vital books.
Yep.
Any questions on this one?
Motion approved. Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, last request. It says coming from the fire department / police department. And the first one, well, Chief, do you want to just give us some insight on the two, and we'll just.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason that it is coming from the police department's overcount account, this is the second transfer for $50,000. There were 2 dispatch positions funded for this fiscal year from ambulance receipts. Those positions have not been filled. We've actually struggled since July 1 to maintain the 9 full-time positions. We were going from 9 to 11, but we've actually not had a chance to reach 11. We've actually struggled to stay at 9 with vacancies. So that sum of ambulance receipt money is there. In speaking with the deputy police chief, knowing the overtime situation that we're in, right now we're comfortable with transferring $50,000 out of that account because we don't anticipate we're going to get to 11 by June 30th. There is still a sum of money that's there, but we don't want to move too quickly to transfer that out. So the possibility exists that we'll be back looking to make an additional transfer from the dispatch account, but we want to get to April, May before we kind of make that decision. So we're comfortable with at least moving 50 at this point from the dispatcher's account.
Any questions relative to the transfer?
I think we've covered this one before.
Yeah, and you know, just to let the committee know, as you know, I'll probably be back, every few weeks once you start meeting on a regular basis. We have money sort of identified in certain areas, but we don't want to move too quickly to move that all at one point. So it'll probably be, every few weeks we'll be kind of, milking this account to get us till June 30th.
Chief, I just have a question relative to, how do you calculate, I don't know what the exact number is. I tried to look back through some of Sharon's emails to how many transfers we've had in the recent meetings. Somewhere around $150,000, I think I saw, maybe even more than that. What is the calculation? Is there an average overtime rate that you utilize when you're calculating to figure out, is it per shift? Because your shifts are 24-hour shifts, so it's, how do you come up with the calculations? I mean, how many shifts are we talking about that comes out of, what does $50,000 look like when you try and break it down a little further?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that our overtime, this week we had some training, so it was a little inflated. Our weekly overtime is anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000 a week. So the reality is this is only going to be 2 to 3 weeks, moving us out. That's why, like I said, we'll have to come back every few weeks to kind of feed the account. I'm going to go into more detail when we do our budget presentation in sort of how that's calculated. The overtime is calculated. But I can tell you, and this is something that the CFO and the town manager and I have talked about, one of the problems with our overtime account is we've been level funded in some respects for many years in our overtime and our holiday overtime. So despite I've had the same amount of money for holiday overtime since fiscal 18. So despite an 8% pay increase, for members over that period of time, added people to the shift, I'm still working with the same $40,000 in holiday overtime that I was in 2018. So it's not that the number of hours is growing because the salaries have increased. It's just less hours that I'm able to fund. We track our overtime in 35 different categories, and I was going to bring that sheet the night of my budget just to kind of show you how we kind of make these projections. But we know where the dollars are going. Like I said, we track it in 35 different categories, but some of it's a moving target, some of it is known. But one of the things is when you look at our total overtime budget, and it's the same thing with building maintenance, it's the same thing with equipment repair. What people need to understand is that on July 1, there is a certain amount of money that is deducted off of that total that's sort of encumbered for known overtime expenses, which is close to $100,000. When you look at how we track in those different categories, we know that that's anticipated overtime. So it's not like, this fiscal year, my overtime budget is $300,000. It's not $300,000 of people calling in sick and we're covering shifts. In fact, when you look at the 35 categories, sick time is it's one of the bottom 3 reasons why we fund overtime. We don't have, I run the numbers on an annual basis. We have an extremely low sick use, in the building. So sometimes people look at that total number and they say, wow, that's a lot, that's a lot of overtime. But again, in 35 different reasons on why that's expended, and knowing that on July 1, again, just like the buildings, we have this year's budget for building is $30,000. On July 1, there's $16,000 encumbered on July 1 for service contracts, all of these other things. So the reality is that I'm really only operating with $15,000 for the remainder of the year, split by 2 fire stations. That's $7,500 a building for 12 months. And overtime is sort of the same way. You can look at that bottom line number, but when you take out all of the known overtime expenses over the course of a year, we're not working with a lot of money for unanticipated problems.
Thank you.
Is there a reason why the overtime has been flat since 2018?
I think, in an effort to balance the budget. It's, the other thing too is we used to have, our budget has gone through some different sort of modifications over the last couple of years. We haven't operated with call firefighters in many years, but when I did have a call firefighter line item, they never came back. The number of call firefighters that I had was dwindling. So the amount of money that I used to have internally to transfer to things like overtime or to building maintenance, I sort of on an annual basis, just with the call firefighter line alone, I had a bit of a safety net within the budget. Well, now that those are not funded, all of my safety net areas within the operating budget are gone.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll just read these off. So the first one is from the dues and meetings account. Amount requested $2,000 going to building maintenance account. Reason given anticipated shortfall in account before June 30th.
And Mr. Chairman, I can just tell you that this will put $2,000, if this transfer is approved tonight, it'll put $2,174 in that account. The water heater at Station 2 went last night, so a new water heater was installed today. And also last week, one of the springs on the garage doors at Station 2 went. I don't have those invoices. I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to exceed this $2,100. So as soon as I get those invoices, I'm going to be looking to figure out where I can scrape some additional money so we can get back in the black within the building account.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion is second, all in favor? Aye. And the last one is, again, as the chief said, from the dispatcher's account. Amount requested $50,000, going to the overtime account. Reason given, anticipated shortfalls in account before June 30th.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you, chief.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Nice. Just some logistical stuff to the CFO, so we'll start budget meetings
I would say late in the month.
for the next couple weeks, Sharon?
Yeah, it has to first go to the selectmen and then they
Okay.
pass it to you, so.
And I don't know if there's any insight you can give us relative to what this year, I know I've had a brief conversation with the town manager before the town meeting, indicating this has the potential for being a tough year for us, probably the most challenging year since I've been on the finance committee, in terms of, it's gonna be tight. I don't know if if there's any sort of insight you can give us just briefly, while we're together relative to the numbers we've gotten from the state, why it's gonna be a little bit tighter this year.
Sure. It is definitely going to be a challenging year, and I think the town manager also commented that this is probably going to be the most challenging year that he's seen in all the years that he's been here. The state aid is not increasing very much, even in the Chapter 70. And we're seeing the increases in Bay Path has a pretty significant increase. We're seeing increase in pension and a lot of different areas that we're going to have to try to balance against where we're going to get raise the revenue from. So we're going to have some very interesting challenges this year that maybe, like you said, that we haven't faced in some of the past years. So we're really going to have to tighten up the belts, and that's what we're doing right now, is to going through and seeing if there's any other areas that we can, take some funds from to balance the budget. So we're not quite there yet. We're still working on the different pieces. So we're hoping maybe within a couple of weeks to get started on the budget meetings. And we are aware too that the finance committee is interested in looking more closely at the capital this year. So we're bringing that forward as well.
When the state reports like a revenue drop, and then that sort of trickles down, is things like the cherry sheet, is that all, like, once they release it, is that solid, or do they try to claw back things as they're trying to find ways to cut? Like, what I'm trying to figure out is,
Right.
how does it roll downhill?
Right, so the governor gives the budget first, and then it goes to the different committees, goes through the House, goes through the Senate, and then they kind of come to an agreement about what they're going to recommend there, and that's when we get our final numbers. We usually work with the governor's numbers to begin with, hoping there's not a lot of significant reductions in that or any additional assessments that are significant.
But do they change after the fact? I guess is my question.
Yes, they can change. So we work with the governor's numbers, and there have been changes in there, and then that's what we go back and absorb afterwards, is see if there's any reductions in revenues, any increases in the assessments, or any net gains, to the town.
Just as a point of how we ended up here tonight, the town manager had contacted me relative to a couple of the transfers, not the fire department one, but there was the two relative to the employees that had some unexpected leaves. And was looking for sort of a verbal transfer, and I just said that I wasn't comfortable in doing that. They were larger amounts, and we hadn't really had that discussion as a committee. Past years, I think in the summer months, I think we had given Kevin Hussey, sort of an authority back in the day up to a certain amount, just for, so we wouldn't have to meet over the summer. And, truly exigent things, verbal, and then it would come before the committee on the next one. But with this one, where we've got some new members, and I don't know that, Ed, we really haven't had that discussion for, I'm trying to think with Ann, if she was doing some small ones, if we,
Only in the summer, from what I remember.
Just from summer, so, yeah, that would be something we would have to discuss, and, you know, we don't have to discuss it tonight anymore, just, I just want to let you sort of know how we came to a sort of an impromptu meeting, and that wasn't something I felt that, especially when there were larger numbers.
Right.
I didn't feel comfortable doing it without talking to the full committee in advance.
Yes, and thank you very much for being very flexible to come in today. The couple of the departments, especially the town clerks, was looking to bring somebody on to fill the gap there with them, especially being busy this time of year. So it's much appreciated.
Questions? We've got minutes on the agenda as well. If you don't have any questions, those will just be adopted as is, unless there's any discussion for that. And without that, I guess we can adjourn, and we'll wait to hear from you relative to when we're ready to meet to start the department budgets, which is always a good time.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn? In a second, all in favor? Aye.